Hey, once again, it's Louisa Munson and the lovely Rick Pursell from Bali. So we are crossing two great nations right now, Portugal and Bali, with the amazing internet that we almost couldn't imagine life without. Rick, how are you today?
Doing very, very well, and hoping that our amazing internet behaves itself today. But I'm ever so grateful that we have it and have the opportunity to communicate across the other side of the planet.
Isn't it
How
incredible?
good is that?
It's awesome. And welcome to anyone that stumbles across us today and thinks, wow, emulating nature, that sounds interesting. Let's check that out. It's funny because actually last week I was talking to somebody about the metaverse and also like the Akashic records and the idea that when you think of the internet, isn't that just a 3D version or like a kind of, it's not physical, but it's a man-made version of what I think we've got anyway with the Akashic records. Like the idea of this web of knowledge that you can tap into. Isn't that just like the organic Akashic records? It seems like we're a world of polarity with all these things that I spiritually know exist. And then all of a sudden we get these physical ones. What are your thoughts? And also, why did you choose this subject? We've got a few people watching already. So let's make...
Very good. Well, first things first. Of course, the metaverse and anything to do with computers is as good as the input.
Yep.
So, and where do we get our ideas from? Well, they're already pre-existing in the field that we experience and live in. So there's nothing new. That just people just tap into that and get these ideas. So as above, so below. So people tap into ideas and then bring them into manifestation as the metaverse or Facebook or whatever it is. I'm not a big fan of the owner, who shall remain nameless. And my biggest concern about the metaverse as a game, as a virtual game, is it will be another distraction from us really engaging in life. It will be an artificial virtual life that sucks us and draws us more and more into it as yet another addiction. Facebook, movies, Netflix, you name what it is, whatever we can get addicted to. This will be a escapism, and it will be, I am sure it will be misused. So while we can use it for good, there was one report that a woman was raped 3 times in the metaverse. Right?
I know. I just don't even know where to start with that.
Exactly. So there's 2 sides to each coin. And I think at this stage, what humanity needs is a good grounding in nature. And that's why I brought up this topic today, emulating nature rather than emulating some game, some artificial virtual game. So that's where it came from.
So where do you want to dive into this one?
Well, it's been said that we came from nature and we'll return to nature. So if we are part of nature and we're not separate from that, we are just another organism on the face of this earth, another species, and should honor and respect these bodies and each of us as a species and collaborate and cooperate together as nature does, and live in peace and harmony. Because although you'll see a pecking order for animals, they are merely trying to survive. So the lion that takes its prey, right, is merely surviving. So it's not a question of killing for the sake of killing as such. Although some species have been known to do that. The sharks were going to a compulsive frenzy. Dingoes have been known, or wolves have been known to slaughter numerous sheep. But those are fairly rare situations. So what we need to look at is how do we how do we replicate nature? And we hold within us the four elements of the earth. And that's earth, wind, fire, and what's the other one? Water. So we have all of those within us, which is a sort of validation that we did come from the earth, because those are the elements that the earth carries. And we can celebrate those. When we swim, when we wash ourselves, we're washing ourselves with water. And our bodies are what? 75% of water. Yeah. So our bodies, like water, if it's kept still, it'll go stagnant and lifeless. If we don't exercise and move our bodies, we too will get very still and lifeless. So biomimicry is a fairly recent addition to energetic exploration. And that's where we take a very strong look at what nature's doing and mimic that. And it's being done in architecture. It's being done throughout different facets of business and life. And then we've got the fact that the earth renews and regenerates itself. It is in a constant state of renewing and regenerating. It takes in carbon dioxide at night and breathes out oxygen. So there's a breath in and a breath out, the opposite of ours. We breathe in oxygen and breathe out carbon dioxide to some degree. So we are replicating nature, and probably the best one I can think of is that just before dawn, there's the darkness before dawn, and then the light gradually creeps up into a false dawn and then a proper dawning. To me, that replicates that the darkness is attracting light. It is the darkness. If we walk into a dark room, the first thing we will do is turn the light on.
Yeah.
So the darkness is attracted to the light, and how that is the metaphor is that the dark times that we go through, the challenges that we go through, the sadness, the pain, the trauma is attracting more light to us. And if we're willing to go in there and resolve those, we'll have more access to the light. So that's how I see us as being a part of nature. Back to you, nature girl.
Wow. Yeah, I'm feeling kind of natural. Okay, I've got a bit of makeup on, but talking about attracting nature and light and emulating it, I guess. When we did our last house move, and we're going to be here for a while, we just haven't got the energy to move again, and we found ourselves in a great location. We can walk to the sea, and we're really, really close to a lot of facilities, and it feels like we've got a lot of freedom around us. The thing that seems to be lacking is we've got a backyard and a really small front garden with a tiny patch of grass. We don't really have any earth apart from this little patch of grass at the front of our house. And I've been thinking about this magical house in the right place, with loads and loads of land, and just getting kind of depressed about it and thinking, no. If I want to bring this house with all the land to me, I've got to start using the land here. I have to make friends with it. I have to create the Garden of Eden in my own backyard. And so literally just yesterday, or a few days ago, I just made this decision that I have to crowd it out, just like nature does as well. Allow nature to work out what's going to live and what's going to, die naturally. So I'm filling up this yard. Carl and I, over the last few weeks, have been making kind of pop-up containers. And I've been growing some sensible things, but I realized I needed to actually start growing things that we really, really like. I mean, Carl and I like the greens, and we've got hundreds of different types of greens, but it's the soft fruits, and my kind of reluctance to create another garden, because we're just going to move and leave it. It just seemed painful all of a sudden. So we've really got into our gardening again. We've really started to kind of mimic nature and throw everything together. And my intention is to, I've got all these soft fruits that I've bought, and over this next however long we're here, I'm just going to be growing more and more of them, creating more and more plants, which is exactly what happens in nature anyway. Like soft fruits, they grow more and more canes, they spread. It's a natural thing. And so I've started the sort of physical garden, the process of spreading. But like when you were talking about us emulating nature, and I was thinking actually while I was getting a glass of water downstairs, as much as we're trying to emulate a beautiful environment that we can grow lovely vegetables in and sit in and feel very satisfied, we haven't got any water. We don't have a well, which is something that we planned. And so, we're going to have to start bringing in these other elements. We've got different parts of nature already arriving. We've got butterflies and bees coming in our garden, and birds and worms. So it hasn't taken much effort to bring things in. So that's our physical representation of it. But we're also, we've received news from a friend that there's like somebody's passed. And so there's grief. There's the water that you were talking about. We're expanding in ways we're not expecting. That's a kind of fire energy, isn't it? We're trying to ground ourselves. So there's lots going on right now, Rick. But then in nature, that is what happens. Like there's always stuff going on. Mother Nature has all these cycles and seeds and plants and roots and migration patterns and all sorts of different things. And nature seems to manage all of that in a really easy way. So back to you.
Well, we have a fairly big vegetable patch here. But I created, I bought some of the elements, but I created a little hydroponic set, which you can virtually put anywhere and grow all the greens that you want, all the leafy greens, for a very little outlay. I think altogether to get some shipped here and material, I probably paid $100. I don't know what that would be in pounds. Really? Yes, have the whole thing set up, and all I did is assemble it and make some adjustments to it. Little pump in a tank, and that's a lovely way to have right next to your kitchen using permaculture, because the things that you need in the kitchen need to be closest to it, and then you go out further into, ultimately, if you have the land, to forest. So that's one area that doesn't need a lot of water. You're recycling the water all the time. And we are recycling some of our water. We're rainwater harvesting, so that water is free, and it gives us a good batch of green leafy vegetables. And then if you wanted to go take that one step further, you could go to aquaponics. We have a fish tank and vegetables going, and the vegetables are they're composted through the fish poo, and it makes fabulous nutrition. And then pots of strawberries and bits and pieces close to the house, and then build shrubs that, if you did move, you could probably transplant rather than a big tree, but a smallish shrub.
The things that are big, we've got growing in big tubs. And we've just drilled holes at the bottom. Rather than spending a massive amount, we've just gone with the old wine pressing tubs that people stand in. They're only a couple of bucks a go. But I hear you. And you're right, like with the permaculture idea of keeping all the things you use all the time as close to the kitchen, and then we're slowly moving out. So the things I need to tend to are close by. I love that you're doing hydroponics and aquaponics, or hydroponics. We've tried a few times, not quite got the balance right for us. But I think we were also emulating the kit, and we should have just bought a standalone kit. That would have been easier. But I absolutely applaud you. We've got some really wickedy whack hydroponics lights and we're wondering where we can use them. But I think we probably will set it up again at some point. I think it's a really good way of actually, you're not only emulating nature, but you're creating a new way of relating to nature.
Yes, yes.
And
it's
actually
good for the kids as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You're growing your own vegetables. You know exactly what's in them. You know they haven't been sprayed with any chemicals. There's a joy about growing them. And the thing with hydroponics is you don't get weeds. Right?
Yeah.
You can still get bugs and snails and visit you, but you're not having to weed the stuff as well. So, and you can pick that up and take it wherever you go. So if you do move, you can just pick it up and transport it elsewhere. And that's creating a sort of artificial nature, but it's better than nothing. And anybody that lived in an apartment that has at least a balcony, right, can have pots of vegetables and some nice flowers and plants and things like that. So we should do that. And you and I both adore nature, and to be out in it it's like it's a refresher, I think, because of the nature that we are, and then being in nature, there is a harmony that goes between the two, and there's a coherent sort of feeling of being at home and being natural and being authentic. I notice that's what happens to me when I go into nature. It feels really, really good. Walking either in the hills here or down the beach, getting your feet in the sand, even a park. I mean, a park has been created, but to walk bare feet on the grass or put your feet in the pond, these are really life enhancing experiences, and they're very simple, very simple.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. I mean, I think that's why we really like our location at the moment, because like we're not really emulating nature as such, but we're both working from home. And the moment we finish our work, we gather the kids, pop them in a car. We will eventually just walk to the beach, but with a 3-year-old, it can take quite a long time. we gather everyone up. We get to the beach 4 minutes later, and we walk on the beach. We sit on the beach. The kids just do little finding shells and stuff like that. We're very, very, very lucky. We've got some amazing resources. So what systems have we got then that mimic nature from your perspective?
Well, if you look at it, humankind has taken credit for much of what we have done in the past. If you go into a jungle in the Amazonian jungle, you'll see vines that are triple vines that are wrapped together. Where did we get the idea for rope? It was from vines, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And we have here sun umbrellas. Right? Mm-hmm. They're exactly the same shape as the tree ferns of New Zealand, and we have tree ferns here. This beautiful round canopy with this stays going out, which is the stalks of the leaves, and this dappled light that runs through them. When we look at one of those above where we have them, and look down at the beach umbrella, it's exactly the same.
Yeah.
So we've copied nature in lots and lots of ways, and we can do that in architecture.
Yes.
We can do it in many, many facets of life. So we're not really originating it. We're just copying it.
Observing and making it our own.
Yeah, sorry. Beavers will put a dam across some waterways. We dam them for hydroelectricity. Right?
Yes.
So there's loads and loads of ways that we are emulating nature.
Yes, absolutely. I often wonder if we're actually from like native to this planet. I may have said this once or twice before, but we're not really able to. I know there are some people that can live in the outdoors and and make it work. But as a species, there aren't any other animals that need to put clothes on or necessarily shelter from the sun or warm up. And, like there aren't any other species that cook their food because they can't process meat or plants even. Some plants need cooking. And it seems that we're actually quite unnatural. We can't seem to make it. I know there are some people that can make it, but it's a very, very extreme life. And so that's one of my observations. Our homes, like I also notice, like whilst we have homes or nests, which I guess animals do, most animals make their nests in circles, don't they? And they're continuously building circles and organic shapes. And humans seem to just like straight lines and based on squares. And I don't necessarily see that. Someone said to me, it might have even been you actually, that there are no straight lines in nature at all. Everything's got a slight deviation, but we've got this sort of very fixed. I'd like to see, I love architecture, like modern architecture, because you are seeing some curves come back and you are seeing the patterns of nature. But it seems to me as well that there's something not very organic about us. Maybe it's our mindset. What are your thoughts there?
Well, I think it's not particularly organic, but it's not a balance of masculine and feminine, because masculine lines are straight and feminine lines are curved. And so in modern architecture, if you look at, let's say, the Sydney Opera House, that was fairly unique in its day. And look at the beautiful curvature of those arches and everything. And they used to be that way in church spires, and Muslim mosques were rounded and square down the bottom. And so, but we seem to have gone off as we've become more cityfied and urbanized. We seem to have dropped a lot of those feminine architectural aspects of where nature does a balance of that. And we've gone into the straight lines. And that's really, it's just a reflection of our society, because it has been, it's not now, but it's transforming now, but it has been a predominantly masculine dominated society, with men leading families, communities, nations, finance, medical. It's all been pretty well men. Now that women are stepping up into their own power and taking over more of those acts and bringing about a balance, we're seeing more feminine aspects coming to the fore. And I love that. I think that's looking at nature. So I think women seem to be more in tune with nature, whereas the male ego it wants to dominate. We want to go out hunting and killing animals. We want to kill each other. We want to mine and strip mine and dig the resources from the earth. I think it's a much more feminine thing to be in harmony and peace with the surroundings and the earth. And there are both sides. There are men that feel that way, and women that are more perhaps masculine. So it's both sides. But what I'm seeing now is we're coming into a balance, and that's where we see the emulation of nature, because nature does balance up. And what we're seeing now is the earth is coming into balance where there has been imbalance, and hence the different weather patterns, more earthquakes, more volcanoes, more tsunamis, more of everything, as the earth is trying to bring about a balance. So the more we get in tune with that, the more we'll be able to ride out these climatic and geological anomalies, perhaps we could call them.
Interesting anomalies, as you say. And you were talking about sort of like man's, and I say that sort of like representing not men, but like man as a civilization, man's need to impose. I always love, and I meant to sort of comment last week, I absolutely adored the little bird that was in the background of our show last week. There was this bird that was just singing its song, and I can hear a bird again, or loads of birds. It's beautiful. But in particular here, lots of people have caged birds on their balconies. So you go out and you hear this lovely bird and you think, oh, that's so beautiful. And then you look up, you see a cage. And we have this like idea of capturing nature somehow. And when you were talking about those anomalies, like climatic anomalies, I wonder what you think about man-made, like men creating nature or creating those anomalies. Like if we're controlling the way populations might be, if we're controlling the way the immune system should be done, we're beside anyone that might use something natural, and imposing our ideas on housing and schooling and this, that, and the other. Then maybe even the environments that we're living in are also being set in a particular way. Man's idea of controlling nature. Do you think that's possible?
I do think to a certain degree it is, and I think that there is some manipulation of nature, and there's certainly the moment we put a dam across a river, we have put an obstacle there and restrained the natural flow of the river. So it banks up all the water, and then the siltifies the dam, and there can be incredible pressure, and some of these dams burst. It's not that unusual. So perhaps they got that idea from the beaver, but the beaver would never prevent a complete cessation of the flow of water. It would flow through the logs that it puts across. So we've tried to copy nature and failed fairly miserably. And we've looked at even indigenous people. In Bali, the food used to come in a banana leaf or a pandan leaf. So people would get the food, they would open up the container, they would eat the food and throw the organic, biodegradable leaf away. The same happens today. The food arrives, we open up the container, eat the food and throw away polystyrene and plastic, which takes years to. So we've copied, there's a lot of copying, but it's out of convenience, out of instant gratification. And nature doesn't do that. Nature doesn't instantaneously take gratification. It generally happens over years. If you look at a volcano, it doesn't just suddenly overnight explode. It's a build-up of pressure for years, often, or months or weeks. But there is always the birthing of this. The birthing of a river starts with a trickle of water on the surface of the land and finishes up like the Grand Canyon, right? Over thousands, millions of years, perhaps. So, but we've become an impatient species that wants everything now. And this is the beauty of this, is that we can have this conversation instead of writing letters that would take 9 months to get to Portugal if you're lucky, and another 9 months to get back. So there's some great convenience about, well, I don't drink it, but instant coffee can be very convenient. Right? But a lot of people are going back to the basics, cooking their own food. There's nothing better than a slow cooked soup that you've harvested out of your own garden. You've planted and grown it. And I think a lot of people who are awakening are trying to get back to those basics and simplifying their lives and divesting some of the unwanted technology. Although we're not at an end of that yet. Technology has saved a lot of activities. When we can open up a vein in the thigh and put a stent in the heart, these things are amazing. So I'm not anti-technology. I think we need a better balance of technology and nature. And it worries me that ours and many kids will just grow up glued to an iPad or a phone, and that becomes their life.
Yeah.
Whereas
Well,
we can maturely use it and then put it down and live a more natural life.
Well, yeah, I completely hear you on so many fronts there. There's a few things I want to pick up. That your most recent comment about kids and their devices, yeah, we have that already. And it pains me when I see it. And I also recognize that they're emulating us. Like we are their nature, aren't they? So they're emulating what they see us do. And right now we are in a world that has that. It does get difficult. We need to give them opportunities to get into nature as well. So like yesterday in the garden, we were all the kids, and we're going to be sowing some more seeds today and whatnot, whilst I got their attention. But when it comes to like picking and eating the gooseberries and stuff, I know they're going to be around and they'll be definitely invested in it. So yeah, we do have that sort of interesting conundrum, like as we progress, or our children are copying us, without having had the same lessons that we've had about sort of nature, and growing up. Like, I don't think anyone after, say, 1990 will know what it's like to like lie back on the ground and almost perceive the heartbeat, the Schumann resonance.
Yes.
I remember that feeling of being on the ground and really feeling like the beat, and not an actual physical beat, but it's almost like waves of something. It's that like deep relaxation, which you get if you go camping for a few days. None of our kids in recent times will know how to connect into that necessarily. It'll have to be taught, or go somewhere where there aren't any kind of conflicting waves around them. They're born into these square boxes with currents going all the way around them, and water that goes in straight lines as well. But actually, that wasn't the bit I wanted to talk to you about. I liked what you were saying there in terms of the longevity. Like nature has a much different time system to us, and it will be building natural phenomenon for thousands of years, and we only see things in really short term. We expect instantaneous results, which might be part of the problem. Now, you were saying about how we have nature, and we have technology. We can use it in like putting stents in our bodies and things like that. And I think there's not many people around that haven't been impacted by medicine in that way. What do you think is going to happen with technology in the future? I was asked this last night on a show. Do you think, like, which way is AI going to go? Like, as more and more of it comes in, is it going to become more inorganic or organic? What do you think is going to happen? Like the idea of, that there might be chips and stuff like that. Why do you think? How do you see things playing out, Rick?
Well, I hope we don't ever lose fish and chips, but I don't think you mean that kind of chip.
You know full well what I'm on
about. I think we will go the route of inorganic for quite some time. I love technology. I love what it can do, how it can benefit humankind, but it has to be in the hands of those who are conscious, who have intelligent behaviors and wise behaviors. If it's in the hands of unconscious people who will misuse it, then that will be derogatory for the bulk of humanity. And the way we're heading now is the arrogance of our human family, who believes that we can do things better than Mother Nature, and then artificially robotize human beings, right? That transhumanism and making people into robots with physical bodies. That's just around the corner. And that's a concern of mine, that we want to try and make humans better. We want to go to Mars or other planets. Why aren't we trying to fix this planet first rather than escaping it with technology? Why don't we do something about this one instead of leaving it in a mess? Why don't we learn to become loving, compassionate, kind human beings before we transform them into a partial technology robot and a partial human? Because I don't think we can trust the science or the scientists that are manipulated, and wherever there is profit at the end of it, then you can guarantee that the integrity and the ethics will go out. That's been a fairly standard approach. So these things, these basics, like in education, we should be teaching our children values, non-violent communication, conflict resolution. These are the things that are going to benefit a child more than, trigonometry and algebra and knowing the Battle of Hastings was fought in 1066 on a field in England.
Yes.
So
I've never actually been asked other than in a pub quiz when that happened. And it's just like someone recounting something. I mean,
So you sort of need to take a deep breath and look at where we're going and slow down a little bit, get into nature, be in sync and harmony with nature, and then come back and say, okay, how can we improve life on this planet? What can we do to improve it? All right, from renewable sources of energy, from beautiful natural medicines and things like that, instead of moving away into an artificial virtual world, which is what the metaverse is promising. It's escapism, right?
It
And
really
we don't
is.
need to escape. We need to embody nature and be part of it.
Yes. Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree, which I'm sure you already sensed anyway.
So where do you, let me bounce it back to you then. Where do you think technology is going?
Given my shared observation, like I share the same observation that these systems of being and systems of doing are I really see the polarity in the spiritual and the technological. So I've always found it fascinating that there are people that can tune in to like the universal energy, and you can kind of focus on your question, and you might have to wait a while, or you might get an instantaneous answer, but it's like you can tune into any person, any time. It's almost like we've got records stored in the ether somehow, and we've got the architecture of the internet. There are I think as people awaken more fully, that those that favor the inorganic way of being will merge more fully with AI. So as some of us merge more fully with the organic universe or the metaverse, the one that has always been, there will be some people that want to merge with the AI in the same way. And in the idea of unity consciousness that we have when we all connect to that source, a bit like how animals in a herd have, like, we talk about herd mentality, and it's usually spoken about in a very kind of negative way, that everyone does the same thing at the same time. Silly humans, look at them. But actually, real organic herds, they will be sensing things, and they seem to be able to communicate between each other without using words or sounds. There is a sense between them that they all share. So they know where the water is. They know it's like a collective memory. And I think there are lots of humans that already have this, like Indigenous people, or people who live more closely according to nature. And I think there will be some people who want to merge into AI, and that as it progresses, what will happen will be a mirroring. And so you'll have people connecting via AI, being able to share thoughts very, very quickly. And it will be this amazing thing that everyone's talking about, because they will be connected to everything. They'll be able to manipulate everything through their emotions or their strong thoughts or focused thoughts. But really what I'm seeing is just like the polar opposite. One that is done to us and one that we do to ourselves. And, for some of us, we might already feel like we have heaven on earth. And for others, I think they will be creating it. I don't see how these two polar opposites can both exist at the same time, because one is dedicated to dominating that way, and the other is dedicated to allowing and yielding and flowing. So they're two kind of separate energies. And again, it's like the masculine and the feminine. So the people who merge with AI will want to impose it on other people, because that is that polar opposite. So that concerns me. We'll all be forced to go down that route.
Yes.
My good friend Tanya, I spent a little bit of time since we've been, since I've been with Carl, a lot of our homes have been very close to power lines, or like we were actually by a mast recently. And, the moment I saw it, I was like, oh God, everything else felt good. There was this mast, and I'm like, okay, there's some kind of electromagnetic something or other that's going on. And my friend, she's an awakened being, very much like yourself. And she said, there's absolutely nothing to fear. Your energy, like if your energy is vast and it's strong and it's already raised, a certain way, these lesser energies really can't get in. And so again, it's a question of keeping your vibration high all the time.
Yes.
And learning how to do that, learning to be complete in that. But, for muggles like me, that kind of straddle both worlds, it's hard to put it together, isn't it?
It is. It's about balance, isn't it? We can replicate nature when you look at the sheer power of the ocean, or the sheer power of a storm, or a landslide. These are all happening in nature, and the calm in the center of a cyclone. There's a lot of things that we could tap into, and okay, we'll have times of calmness, but then there'll be times of a lot of activity. And how can we tune into the power of the earth and the powerful elements of the earth that are happening with the wind and the fire and the earthquakes and the water and rain and storms and floods? How can we tune into that power center and put that power to good use to benefit humanity, rather than fall prey to it and think, I'm a victim here, I can't do anything about it?
Yeah.
So stepping into our sovereignty so that we can ride out whatever happens on the earth, with ourselves, with humanity. It doesn't matter what is thrown at us, we can remain stable in our sovereignty. Because at the end of the day, we are infinite beings. We are infinite consciousness having a human experience.
Yes.
And we've forgotten that. We've become separated from that. So tuning into that infiniteness that is within us, and it's within everyone, then we could ride out any storm whatsoever.
Yes. I feel that. I absolutely feel that. A couple of things I want to share.
Good.
the first one, like, how do we do that? How do we harness that energy? I guess the first step is not to see it as something outside of ourselves, which is, what you're saying is being an infinite energy, like knowing that you're infinite by nature. And so you may well ride out this storm, and your body might not make it, but your energy will. Got a fly in here. That's early in the season. I see your fly's gone.
I just sent one across. It was annoying me. Go to Portugal.
Oh, don't worry. I've got plenty of time for that. We'll be full of flies. It won't take very long once the heat gets up. Yeah, so that was my first thought is when we see ourselves as separate from nature, then we really can't harness it in a sort of like natural way. And then the second thing, I actually wanted to share something with you. I interviewed a wonderful woman who has been through some absolute trauma, like trauma that you can't imagine, or you might be able to, but she wrote a book called I Am Serena, and her name is Serena Faith Masterson. And she was born into a CIA family who also were part of a certain type of ring. And she experienced trauma from the moment she was born. Now, her story, she doesn't go into the abuse that much. Suffice to say, she mentions that she was drowned several times, raped several times, electrocuted really frequently, strapped down, naked, so much. I mean, she was traumatized from word go. And from her story, I've learned about healing because she has learned to heal all of these traumas, and it's an ongoing process. But she created over 300 separate personalities to be able to process the trauma and to keep herself alive, which was her primary focus. Her soul's directive was to do that. Her story is about integrating all these personalities, and in doing so is kind of reunifying, which is a bit like not seeing everything as a separate experience. But the actual thing that I really wanted to share with you in terms of how do we harness the power of nature? And I'm saying, well, we need to not see ourselves as separate from it. During one of her experiences of drowning or being physically drowned, she and in revisiting her experiences as a conscious being to see what was going on, she realized that she was able to slow down her heartbeat. It's like something else took over for her in those moments, and she must just be a very powerful creator. And in that moment of necessity, her body was able to keep her alive, and this kind of calm came over, and she almost describes like becoming one with the water. So like her physical body shut down, but her consciousness came out. And she learned to do that through necessity. And she wasn't like forcing it. It's almost like her life was to come and understand that she could move her consciousness around. I mean, she had to learn it from an early age because of the trauma that she was in.
Yes.
And so she's learnt to become water, and she's learnt to become lots of different things, or she knows she's done it in the past. A bit like a superhero, like how we hear about superheroes that might be able to move things with their mind. And I don't think they are, extreme things that nobody can do. I've been doing little experiments like that since I was very small to see what my consciousness could do. Not as much as I hoped, but it is possible. So I just wanted to share that. I mean, she's absolutely incredible. She actually, like you're saying, the eye in the storm, she has become that eye in the storm, literally.
Yes. Well, first of all, I take my hat off to you, what you have achieved. And the irony is that we have this power within us. We don't need to even look out at nature, although nature is a beautiful reminder of what we have within us. but everything that we're looking for, we are infinite beings. So if we can just, we've covered that over. So we're not discovering something, we're uncovering it. We're uncovering, pulling back the veils of illusion to find out and see what and feel and live from that place inside. And many of us have had experiences that have had a glimpse. We sort of get the door open. I'm just going to show you a glimpse of what you are, right? Then the doors close again because we're now pining for that experience again. But it's just like if you were to throw the barn doors open, you'd be totally overwhelmed, absolutely overwhelmed with the amount of power and could we deal with that? So we now and again we get glimpses of it, and it can be as much as just watching a beautiful sunset or listening to a bird singing in the morning. And the more we tune into nature, the more we see this bigness, this expansiveness, just laying on the lawn and looking up at the stars, right? So we can use our hearts connected to nature as a portal to this infinite consciousness that animates these bodies. So, and then we can stay there. We can visit that anytime. And yes, we'll roller coaster as long as we're roller coastering uphill and not downhill. Right?
Yeah.
That's the trick. And the trick is that the more you feel the pressure coming in on you is to consciously step into that power, right? And it's just a breath away, just a centering and coming back into that power, or a meditation, or a walk in the woods, or something to do with nature.
Yes, that is that is my personal experience, and also what I read with Serena as well, and what I know from you is the yielding, isn't it? That breath. It's like you're choosing your breath in that moment. You're choosing. It's another reset point.
Yes.
But when you are in those places of trauma, when you stand up as an obstacle to it, you're in separation to it. You almost have to allow it. The only thing I can really compare it to in my life is giving birth. There comes a point where you think, whenever I'm with all three of my births, I thought, I'm going to die. This is going to kill me. I feel like I'm dying. And that's the point when you are actually giving birth. That's when you know you're about to, and you have to just like allow it. You can't stop it.
Yes.
If you stop it, you become deaf. You have to allow the feeling of death to open you up completely.
Yes. And that's the death of the ego.
Yeah.
That's the experience we have when we finally let go of the egoic mind and are just there experiencing the pain. And many women have a massive DMT experience through natural birth. So that gets us through that pain.
Yeah.
But it's really driving us into present time and see, can you let go of the story around this and just experience this intense pain?
Yeah.
And then there's a relief from it. And often the brain secretes out DMT and it becomes quite an experience.
Yes.
So I'm told this lifetime, and I don't remember giving birth too many times in the past, but I'm sure I must have.
Yeah. You raise a good point there about like birth and sorry. One thing I also notice is right now we manage birth and we manage death through chemicals. And I'd love to. I mean, I understand for many people who are passing, they're probably very grateful for those chemicals, and I also wonder if there are other ways of birthing and dying. I know there are other ways of birthing because I've had 2 natural births and one as natural as it could be without a lot of interference. But I bless the midwives that were there anyway. I've got, I had 3 healthy live births. I was very fortunate. But there is something about being conscious as you come into this world. I wonder if arriving in this world and departing this world in full consciousness creates something, like sets us up for a new experience. I wonder what effect not being consciously aware that you're being born, or not being consciously aware that you're passing, has on the soul. I wonder if it takes a while to wake up. I know that when I my delivery that was had a little bit of chemicals. I had about gas and air for about 5 minutes right at the end. It took me a long time to recover. And I felt very groggy. It wasn't as enjoyable as the actual natural birth, actually. In the end, I was like, ugh, get this away. It just didn't feel right to me. Well, what are your thoughts about that? Do you think our civilization has almost ruined the idea? I know it almost seems like I'm talking another language probably to most people if they were to hear it, because we can't conceive of having a headache without pain relief, But I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think if we look at Indigenous tribal people, Australian Aborigine women would just be on walkabout. They'd find a tree, a little bit of shade. They would squat down using gravity to help with the birth, not laying down. And they would tend to the child for perhaps half a day. And then they would catch up with the rest of the tribe. They would use natural medicines, tea tree, pawpaw creams in the tropics. The Amazonian jungle is full of natural cures and medicines. And we've gone the artificial route because we don't live in the Amazon. I see the it's convenience, and also manipulated that way, where there's profit to be made. The integrity of some people will go out. So if we can go back to those basics, not back to the Stone Age, but try and live a more authentic, basic, natural life in the modern world, I think that's very possible. Very possible.
Cool. Thank you. Sorry, just processing everything.
I
Yeah.
thought you'd gone off into La La Land there for a moment.
No, I was just I don't know. Can you remember any of your deaths? I know actually we're coming up. This is another let's have an adventure into consciousness next week. Maybe you can share with me. You have memories of past lives, right? Is that true?
I've got a couple of memories of past life. Certainly my last one, and previous in another era. So it's possible to tap into that.
Yeah, I'd be really keen to sort of explore the space in between, like consciousness in between lives, and like the death and birth, and your perception of that. Would that be okay?
I think I could guide you to a book that would be far more articulated, better articulated than me. The Tibetan Buddhist book, the Book of Living and Dying. The Tibetan Book of Living and Dying. It talks about the dying process, the in-between process, and the rebirthing process. And that's what I would recommend. Okay. But I don't think I'm qualified enough to be able to communicate exactly, articulate it either as well. Not that I'd be afraid to or would be reticent about it. I just, through regression therapy, I just know 2 of my lifetimes that I regress to. But that doesn't mean to say I know exactly what happened in between the lives. It just, there is some memory of that. So.
Okay, I really appreciate and respect your answer there. Thank you very much. And thank you to everyone that's watching today. Thank you for joining us wherever you are in the world. I hope you have a wonderful day ahead and that you'll join Rick and I again as we wax lyrical about another subject. And have a beautiful day, Rick. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you so much. And to all our viewers and listeners, thank you for tuning in. Hope you've got something that you can take away from this and apply it into your life, and you will have made our day. Thank you.
Excellent. Bye from us.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.